Welcome, everyone, to this Distilled Spirits Council Ask the Experts webinar series. I'm Amy Carter, the Vice President of Member Services and Business Development here at the Distilled Spirits Council of the U.S., also known as DISCUS. Today's topic is choosing the distribution network that's right for you. We've got some folks from Park Street Imports and from Breakthrough Beverage that I will introduce in just a second. I do want to let everyone know that we are recording this webinar and it will be available to everyone via the Discus website, our events page on our website, as well as our YouTube channel. But before I welcome today's speakers, I have a couple more housekeeping things to do. One is to remind everyone of our antitrust policy statement, which is basically to refrain from discussing or exchanging information relating to pricing, marketing or sales plans, costs or confidential plans regarding output or production, boycotting another company, not recruiting or hiring each other's employees or salaries, wages, or benefits, or any other competitively sensitive or proprietary business information. And if you aren't aware about Discus, we're the leading voice and advocate not only for our members, but also for the distilled spirits industry overall. We provide a wealth of resources and services, including this webinar series, which really hopes to aims to educate and to share relevant ideas, trends, to spark discussion and ideas and opportunities related to the distilled spirits industry. Recent webinars have included topics like the future of barrels, flavor balancing, the rise of agave spirits in the United States, small business grants for export activities, trends in the U.S. liquor market that was featuring Nielsen IQ, e-commerce with Reserve Bar, and direct-to-consumer e-commerce with Speakeasy, which is now a part of Flaviar, global regulatory compliance, which is a huge issue, and that was thanks to TraceOne. We've also had tips for accessing capital and expertise from Pronghorn and from some industry experts and brand experts. And then we've also had some webinars on the alcohol buying trends of the socially conscious, and that was with Women of the Vine and Spirits. And so I'm telling you all that because if you go to our website, you'll be able to see any of those webinars and any sort of PowerPoint slides from those webinars and also get contact information from those speakers. Okay, so today, focusing on distribution and choosing the right distribution network for you. We've got Jesse Cortez from Park Street and John Oliver, who is at Breakthrough Beverage Group. Welcome, Jesse and John.
Thanks for having us, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So Jesse, John, and I are going to have a conversation for about 25, 30 minutes or so. We'll take questions throughout, and if anybody has a question, just use the raise your hand icon, which kind of looks like this at the top of your screen, or you can put your question in the chat or in the Q&A section of Zoom. But we'll also save time at the end for Q&A. So if you don't get your question asked throughout, we'll have time at the end. And then lastly, before we get started, contact information for both Jesse and for John is on the last slide. So you can contact them directly, or Discus, we're happy to put you in touch with Jesse or John. And then next week, we'll send everyone who's on this call, or anyone who registered for the webinar, we'll send to you directly a link to the webinar recording. So with all that housekeeping, then, Jesse, John, let's get started. So I know you've got some slides you want to go through, and you're going to talk us through distribution in the United States specifically. We're not looking globally because that would be, I think, a whole webinar series in and of itself.
Many.
But so so I'm new to the industry, and I'm asked, like I said, I may ask some questions throughout, and I'm encouraging others to do the same. We do have Discus craft members who we always hear, need access to or need to understand distribution channels. And there are also maybe webinar participants who are new to the industry or thinking of jumping into the industry. So I would encourage them to ask questions throughout also, because I'm sure as you two know, it's not enough to make the best tasting spirit. You got to actually get it out there into consumers' hands if you want to stay in business. But before we get into the actual, distribution, maybe I'd like to get a sense from both of you, like how did you both individually get started in the industry, and then maybe how did you get started in distribution? And maybe tell us a little bit about both Park Street and Breakthrough. So sort of give us the 45-second elevator pitch on your companies, and maybe we'll start with Jesse, and then Jesse, when you're finished, we'll just go over to
Yeah,
John.
cool. My entry was by design or on purpose. I was always kind of interested in it since college, I guess. I had a close family friend who was a VP in Bacardi, and not that we had any ties to that in particular, but I think that just kind of sparked my interest. And then I met some other brand managers throughout university and whatnot, and I think it just it was kind of a interest of mine. So that's kind of the entry into the industry. Nothing too exciting, but you want me to give a little background on Park Street too?
Sure, give a little background on Park Street, then we'll switch to John.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, so we're a very technology driven and focused national importer in the US and the EU. And we are a wholesaler as well in New York, New Jersey, Florida, and California. We have a robust software platform that suppliers provides full transparency into their business. And we work with thousands of brands. So everything from what I would call like mom and pop brand, a husband and wife launching a vodka in Miami or wherever it may be, to some of the largest independent or private label brands.
Fantastic. We do have a few mom and pops here in the Discus membership.
Sure.
So I'm sure they'll be interested. Hey, so John, how about you? Do you have a similar story or something different, how you got into the industry?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. One, I started actually got into the industry through a kind of marketing research role when I initially, many years ago, started out in Nielsen. And I started supporting a lot of beverage alcohol clients in that role. And that segued into a position where I was the full-time Nielsen rep for Moet Hennessy USA, or Shefflin Somerset at the time. And then spent many years doing that and really getting entrenched in both wine and spirits, which was great. And I think I really attached to the love of the innovation of this industry and how it really helps to form not only like great brands, it's one of the true categories where branding is still a really important thing. And, also just from a, lifestyle standpoint, I've been a foodie my whole life and, always appreciated pairings and things like that. And a lot of that speaks to just kind of like a personal interest on my end why I stuck with it. But so that's kind of how I got into it. And then ultimately that transitioned into the role that I'm in now, or the company that I'm with now, which is Breakthrough Beverage Group. I've been with Breakthrough for 17 plus years now. And we are the third largest wine and spirits distributor in the US. We operate in 16 markets plus Canada. And we have all total beverage alcohol categories: beer, wine, and spirits. Beer in select markets, wine and spirits in every market where we operate. We're a fourth generation family owned and operated company. And I specifically sit on our supplier business development team. I'm the senior director of business development there, and I handle a lot of our more smaller and mid-tier emerging suppliers, which is a smaller, group of brands or division that we have called Trident, which you can kind of see in my background here. And a lot of what we do there is help to incubate, identify those next generation of spirits, and help them grow and build across our network and hopefully become those next generation of larger wine and spirits in our industry.
Oh, awesome. I love it. I love how both of you got into the industry. And I love the fact that, John, that you are a foodie. I'm absolutely a foodie as well. I just came back from vacation overseas, and I realized that, well, I did buy some spirits. The other things I bought in duty free were chocolate. And we're actually starting to, hopefully next year, Discus, we're going to start doing a couple of webinars and possibly some in-person events, fingers crossed, that relate to spirits and food tasting. So everyone stay tuned for that. If we can make sure that happens.
Here right now.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. As much as we'd like to turn this into a spirits
another webinar.
Exactly, a different webinar. in order to get to the pairing, we have to actually get product in people's hands. Aha, that was a good segue. Thank you very much, Amy. So maybe we'll just do that. Switch on to sort of your beginner's guide to distribution. If I can ask, there we go. So anyway, so I know you guys are gonna go through the slides. I think Jesse, you're gonna start off here, and then, like I said before, I'll ask questions and along the way, and hopefully others will as well. So I'll let you take it away from here.
All right, great. Yeah, we can. Yeah, this is perfect. So yeah, I mean, this webinar is really focused. You see the three-tier system there. It's really focused on the middle tier, right? The wholesale tier. And just a quick background, kind of what we've seen the last 30 years or so, and some of the consolidation in the distributor landscape. I think maybe a lot of you may be familiar with this. Maybe some of you new to the industry, less so. But back mid 90s, 30 years ago or so, man, it's crazy to say 30 years ago. There are around 3,000 wholesalers and that brands could work through, right? And now with some of the consolidation, there's about roughly a third of that amount, but more products, right? We file COLAs every day, label approvals, right? And I think there's been a record amount in the last 5 years, maybe, that the TTB has processed. So what that means is more products coming to market, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but a smaller funnel that they have to work through, and of distributors. And so, I think with that, there's naturally came about different types of models of distribution, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today.
Cool. I do want to say just one thing for anybody who is not familiar with the three-tier system here in the United States, or just industry fundamentals writ large. Discus has something called Discus Academy, and there is a course and/or individual webinars on industry fundamentals. So this is a great slide here. It helps crystallize things in my head. But if anyone ever wants to delve in deeper, just go to discusacademy.com and you can check out those courses and learn more about the three-tier system and other parts of sort of the intro to the industry. So just a little pitch there. I'm sorry, I'll let you guys keep going.
No, you're good. John, do you want to add anything there, or we can move?
I think just the biggest thing on this is, as if depending on where those on the call are in terms of like the life stage of their brand, and we're going to get into it, there are a lot of different options. While distributors have consolidated over the past several years, there are still a lot of different sizes and types of distributors that are available. And you absolutely need to vet all of those options to understand what makes the best sense for you in where your brand is and how you want to grow that brand. So keep that in mind. And distributors in general will help with a lot of logistical things that you will need to kind of graduate into as you continue to grow your portfolio and the demands that come with that to meet the needs of each market that you're in.
I'm glad you used that word, graduate. We use that. I'll probably get to that at some point as well. So I think we can move on to the next slide. So here, it's just different types of distributors. And I just want to kind of make a disclaimer, I guess, up front, is that there's some overlap, right? There's some regional distributors that are large distributors, but we tried to break it down and bucket them. But there is some overlap, and what's good for one brand, as John just mentioned, may not be good for another brand in the life cycle or in the market or wherever. So I was actually going to mention that as well, as in terms of you always want to speak with multiple potential partners, just like you would in any aspect of your business, or vetting different vendors and whatnot. It's the same with distributors, right? You want to talk with multiple to see what's the best. Even if you really like that first conversation, it's still a good idea to have 2 or 3 conversations to see what's out there and really get a sense of what's the best fit. So I just want to put that out there, but there's some generalizations made here a little bit. Um, but yeah, John, if you want to kind of kick off
Yeah.
with large distributors.
So, there's more than four options here, but we've kind of bucketed them into four different types. Um, if we start at the top and kind of work our way down, larger distributors are going to offer, kind of that scale that you really need to reach not only a network wide kind of across the US strategy, but within a specific market. So you see four different examples there, Breakthrough being one of them, Southern Glacier, RNDC being two other, they're two larger distributors than even we are as Breakthrough in terms of size and the number of markets that are serviced. But we also included an example there like Empire Merchants, which is based in New York. These types of distributors allow you to go very deep into that market. They service the full market and most likely will call on the largest number of accounts and reach and service the largest number of accounts within that market. So if you're looking to go, or let's say you have, already established distribution in the market and you've reached a certain point but need to get deeper, that's when you would kind of hit that benchmark where maybe a large distributor makes sense for you. If you haven't gotten there, then maybe one of the other three options on the slide makes perfect sense. You have something like Jesse, which is a part of, which is Park Street, and maybe you need to provide that proof of concept in a market. I'm part of a team that vets over 1,000 brands that come to us at Breakthrough a year that are interested in doing business with us. More than 75 to 80% of those brands are brand new and have never been in a market. And so our challenge to them most of the time is pick a market and go in there and get a proof of concept. Show that it works. And Park Street is a great option for that in terms of you kind of getting into those maybe 10 or 12 lighthouse accounts and showing that it works before you get into a relationship with an actual distributor. Somewhere in between, like a regional or an independent distributor right here, might make sense because if where you are in your, like I say, life stage or life cycle of the brand is, okay, we've already proven that it works in some accounts in a market. Now we need to really get a distribution partner, or maybe we need to find a smaller or very market specific independent distributor or a regional distributor that only covers like 2 or 3 markets, but is able to get into a decent amount of accounts more than myself just kind of self-distributing as a brand owner, right? So maybe that's the right option for you. And this is why you need to vet all different types of distributors. So that's kind of in a nutshell the different options or why we've kind of broken these out. Larger distributors giving you the biggest net that you can cast over a particular market, or total US distributor going deep in every market. Regional or independent distributors giving you maybe a smaller footprint. They don't service as many accounts, but could get into more accounts than you can with just self-distributing. And then you have that self-distributing option if you're really just starting out and want to prove that a brand can work and can pull in an account.
John, I'm sorry, can I say, I love what you said, because when you first started talking, one of my first questions was like, well, how do you know which one do you go to first? And I think everyone, like what I've heard from folks is, oh, I just want to be with one of the large distributors. But I like what you said in terms of proof of concept, and then sort of grow. But it's maybe useful to have conversations with a large regional, independent, and self-distribution in the early stages, so you can actually have that marketing or sort of distribution plan, a longer term distribution plan in your head.
It is so important, and I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but this is so important for those on the call to understand that. Yes, you need to make money and you need to move product. I get it. You've been building this brand forever and you need to get it out there, but there's a way to do it. Like you got to think about long-term sustainable growth and what's the best path towards that. And we'll give you some tips on do's and don'ts in terms of that and what we look for. But we, even as Breakthrough, will suggest, start out with an organization like Park Street and prove that it works before you come to us. Or guess what? We would recommend this distributor or this distributor to start out from a smaller independent standpoint. because that's only going to make it, you have to have patience in this industry as you build your brand. Got to have a lot of money, but you got to have a lot of patience as well. And understanding these options and when to pull the trigger to kind of, we'll say it again, graduate into the next option is really important.
Yeah, to add to that, we work with a lot of brands that do exactly that, and different distributors do recommend this option, and it's cool because you can scale after that. So, like, let's say on the self-pitch distribution, we would call it, or in other words, like clearing wholesaling, um, you really maintain full control and responsibility for the sales and marketing aspect of the brand, but you can focus on the accounts that you want the product to be in, and hopefully either getting turnover and moving and reorders, which is very important, and then taking that to distributors that maybe you did talk to before or you haven't spoken to yet. That's kind of graduating out of that self-pitch distribution to more traditional distribution, right? And there's also a concept of kind of patchwork distribution, which a lot of brands that we work with have that type of setup where maybe they have different distributors in different markets because they had conversations in every different state, right? Rather than going kind of a national deal, they felt more comfortable or felt like it was a better business plan for them, where it's kind of patchwork, right? Different distributor in Florida and New York and Georgia and that type of thing as they grow. So there's a lot of different potentialities here. But I
Yeah,
think John
and there are pros and cons to that. That's a great way to understand what distributor works, what type of distributor works best for your brand and your strategy as to how you want to go to market. I think Jesse brings up a really important point that you need to pick the best distributor in that market for you, that you feel like is going to service the needs of where your brand is at that point in time, and where that is going to get you in the 1, 3, 5 year plan. As you grow older and more, you grow in size, and you start to consider those large distributors, you have to figure out, does it make sense to align nationally with a larger distributor or maintain my current strategy if I have kind of this, all different types of distributors everywhere? You get more services from a larger distributor if you're aligned nationally, but then, you don't have the liberty of maybe selecting the best distributor in every single market. So you have to weigh those options and what makes sense for you as a brand as you continue to evolve and grow.
There is a question in the chat, and I think you guys have touched around it, but I'm just going to read it anyway. How do you know when to scale up? I think you both kind of touched on that, but if you have any examples from customers you have worked with or haven't worked with, or any thoughts there, I think that'd be helpful.
So when we work with brands that we've taken on that are newer to market, and let's say they only start in one market with Breakthrough, we will challenge them to get a certain number of accounts to start, right? Okay, get in top 50 accounts that you want to be in, and let's see how that goes. Let's make sure that the velocity, and I'm going to use that term quite a few more times in the next few slides, make sure that the pull and velocity is there, and we're seeing reorders from customers in those accounts that you're in, and you're activating the brand and bringing it to life, whether in retail and or on premise on the back bar, menus, events, whatever it is. Then you have the right to go into another set of accounts. Let's now take that 50 and make it 150, 200, 300, whatever. I'm just throwing out random numbers, but you continue to grow and take that kind of stair step approach to an account, to a market. And when you've really, gotten to a point where I've been in this market long enough, I've shown growth in this market, I have the funds to support in market and have people there, and now I've made enough money to actually support a new market, then you're ready to continue expanding. So many times brands will say, oh, I'm doing good here, I got it, okay, let's go here. But you don't have the resources like you have. You would need to maintain and grow the business in market one and have the funds to do that and have additional funds to go into market 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Some of them want to go into market 2, 3, 4, or 5 and forget about market 1 and put the funds in the other one. And then they start losing business in market 1. So you really got to, it's both a financial as well as just a general brand growth and strategic kind of way of building your business. It's an art, not a science, on when to pull the trigger to move to a new market.
Jesse,
Yeah,
I feel like you have a comment to it. Then there's a question in the chat I want to get to. So,
yeah, just a quick. Well, I was going to actually ask John if he could maybe elaborate just on velocity, so the people who maybe are new or just don't really grasp that, just understand exactly what that means.
Yeah,
and
velocity
the pull
or
also, John, pull too. Yeah.
yes, velocity and pull. So velocity, we measure velocity on cases per account, average cases per account over a certain period of time, right? So if we look at year to date, the past 10 months, what's the average number of cases that are being bought by account over that period of time? And let's compare that to a previous same period of time. If an average number of cases is going down, your velocity is going down. And if it's going up, you could see it. So that gives us a sense of, are accounts reordering? Are they buying more per account? Are they buying less? That is so important to measure the brand health. That's the number one measurement that we use to gauge whether a brand is growing in awareness and demand. And velocity is directly related to pull. Is it being pulled off the shelf, meaning customers are buying it? Is it being, poured off the back bar or from a menu or a call out or whatever it might be? But that is what pull is.
And so let me get to the question in the chat, which is, how do you get out of a bad relationship with a distributor who is not pushing your product at all? John, you touched on a couple of things because it's the distributor as well as the supplier, it sounded like to me. So, let me just put that
in the law, the regulatory.
There's also law, yes.
I think we can talk to that. I think maybe let's kind of just move to the next slide or two, because some of those points are included in like what we look for and ways of working that I think will show you how to either fix that problem or be able to kind of delicately remove yourself from that problem and find a solution or a partner or distributor partner that's going to work for you. So what do we look for in a brand partner when we're vetting them? I call this the 10 Ps. So you can really bucket these into 3 groups. The first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, product, price, package, and purpose, are probably the must-haves of what we look for in a brand when we're vetting to determine if we want to take this on or not. And that's kind of relates to these first 4, product, price, package, purpose, really relate to your packaging. What does it look like? Branding. What's your brand name? What is your taste? Obviously, it's got to be good juice, and where does it sit within that category? So, that's first. It's got to look good. It's got to be something that, obviously the branding and the brand name have a lot to do with it. So many times if you're 5 deep at a bar and you call out your brand name and a bartender can't hear or understand what it is, it's not a good brand name. So things like that, little things, very logistical and just everyday things you got to keep in mind. And then like purpose really goes into kind of the value and the why of your brand. Why does this brand deserve a place on the shelf or back bar? Why was this brand created? Why is it relevant now to consumers? Why does it deserve a place in this category? Does it bring something new to the category? Does it tell an interesting and new story about something? So it needs to stand out in those types of ways versus the competition. And all of that relates to this kind of awareness and pull. So that's kind of like the first 4. And then like 5, 6, and 7 are like the who's and where's. Who is behind this brand? Who are you if you're an owner or founder, or who's the team behind it? And why, again, did you create this brand? Who are how are you funded, and who are the investors behind it? Who are the strategists, the advisors? Who's the dedicated sales team? Do you have one? Do you have one by market? Do you just have a regional approach? Do you have one person for the whole market? And then like presence, where was the brand originated? Do you own your home state? Do you own your zip code? Are you in enough accounts there to prove that, hey, at least you better own where you're from? Otherwise, don't think about going anywhere else. Where does this sit on the shelf versus the competitive set? What is your competitive set? Do you know what that is? All that kind of stuff, your marketing mix, your channel mix. These are kind of like the people, place, and presence end of it. And then the last is like pull through, profitable, passion. This is the value you're bringing. What is your brand health? What is your pull through? Are you activating and marketing? Do you have a digital presence? This all relates to that awareness and pull. And then profitable, what are the GP margins that we as distributors are making? How do you justify saying, okay, we're going to ask, our reps have to spend a bit more time taking the time to sell and introduce your brand if you're a new brand. We better have some desirable margins to justify that extra time versus a standard brand. What's your SKU alignment? Why do you have as many SKUs as you have? That takes more, slots up in our warehouse. What's your 3-5 year plan? And then the last thing is passion. You better do what you love because you have one shot at this and you gotta love what you're doing and you gotta be memorable about it. And that helps to build lasting relationships.
Yeah, I think that's a really great recap. And it's almost, if you guys think of it as like a distributor with an investor mindset, because they're investing in your brand. So everything that he just went through, it's almost like what an investor would ask, right? So you guys should have this, ready to go and all of these items, just thought about beforehand, of course. So
this is fantastic, and I love the point about, we do have a question in the chat I'm going to read in a second, but I love the question. I loved your comment about how many SKUs do you have? Because the passion, purpose, I think storytelling and all those things I assume help the distributor. Like it's like how do you help yourself? How do you help your distributor help you, kind of thing. But let me read this question here. Great explanation, thank you. I currently have distro with Ajax moving about 20 to 30 cases per month. Currently discussing expanding markets and trying to decide the best strategy for finding distribution in a new market. So if I don't know, Park Street or Breaker, do you all have colleagues that provide strategy, either consulting or expertise, or do you know of other? I know we've got some in our partner membership,
definitely
some strategy of support there. So
we definitely can connect them with people. John, I don't know about you. I know on our end, if they want to reach out, we can.
Yeah, I mean, we recommend certain distributors for certain markets. I mean, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but if you're a brand and you're moving 20 cases a month in a market, you still need to go deeper in that market. I mean, if you were to ask, okay, we want to go into a neighboring market and maybe it is a breakthrough market, we would say, okay, show us exactly what you're doing in the current market that you're in. How long have you been in that market? How many accounts is that actually that are contributing to those 20 cases a month? And what are your plans to build still in that market? And what resources are you going to give our market now? Because we're going to ask for a lot. We need to make sure that if we're going to ask our reps to go out and sell something and help build that story, and let's say we get it into those 10 or 20 out and there's nobody in the market to support that and it just sits on the shelf, it's over. You get one shot at it. So you need to make sure that you are 100% ready and have the resources and have proven that you own the market that you're currently in before you go to another market.
But John, so I'm hearing you saying that it's possible that 20 to 30 cases a month may not, depending on the size of your market, that may not be enough cases for you to all say, yeah, you totally own your market and ready to move to another one.
Yeah.
And so, is that then you do some more, okay, there's another question that just popped in the chat, but let me just ask this question. So does that mean then you try talking to some restaurants, get into so you're on the back bar, so you're on the menu, like how, do you have folks that can help people think through that type of strategy, that type of marketing and
100%.
planning?
Yes. I mean, that is so much of, in kind of the team that I'm on, and specifically the Trident team within our supplier business development team, This is what, we help brands try and do. Now, obviously, we're doing it with the brands that are part of our portfolio that are the younger, small emerging brands. But when we have these initial discussions with brands, like I said, we vet over 1,000 brands. Maybe we talk to about 150, 200 of those that actually get to the point of maybe it's worth a phone conversation. A lot of what's that's discussed, whether we take it on or not, is talking about a lot of these things, like knowing and diving into the brand and understanding where it's at, and then helping to say, okay, well, what's your cocktail strategy? Do you have one? And why is that your cocktail? And is it too complicated, or is it simple, or is it satisfying a trend in that space that would make it, desirable to put on the menu? Do you have programming behind that to drive that menu placement? Do you have support materials, physical tchotchkes? Like, what does that look like? And then in the retail end of things, what are you going to do? Do you have enough funds to drive liquid to lips and do sampling? So much of that has to be supported. And because again, you as a brand owner have been in the world of your brand for so long, and you feel like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. But you need to take a step way outside of that and come into it as if you were a shopper that didn't know never heard about your brand before, didn't know anything about it, walked into a store. Why are they just going to go ahead and pick up that brand? You need to be able to activate it way more so in the early stages and have funds to help drive that, in the hopes that it's actually going to get to a point where it can sit on the shelf and get naturally pulled off without having a lot of demos or massive amounts of POS and things like that.
That was helpful, John. And I'm so going to use that, driving liquid to lips, as maybe a future webinar title. But let me get to the question in the chat. How does a new brand decide how many employees to maintain in direct sales support and demo tasting types versus expecting a distributor to do that? Or does that become a big issue over who distributes?
Okay, so I mean it's a great question.
It's a
great
one.
question.
Yeah.
And again, this is an art, not a science. So don't take this word for it, because every brand is different. It is a balance of knowing you have to start out. You can't have a huge sales force to begin with unless you are ridiculously funded, like, billions practically, right? So how do you get to that point? Well, you have to start in a kind of proof of concept, building it yourself type of situation, and start to build the business in a core group of accounts that you and whoever might be on your team can manage. We as distributors are not going to do that for you. We're going to be able to file your brand, do the pricing, warehouse it, deliver it, ship it, things like that. We are not your marketing team. We are not that. And we never will be. You need to own that and make sure that you are owning the brand messaging, telling the story out in the market, being able to go out in the market and doing that in the early stages of your brand. Our reps are never going to do that. You have to, again, take a step outside. Think about it. A rep has thousands of SKUs in their book. Why? When they have a lot of those SKUs that they can easily make commission dollars off of with a very easy, quick sale, refilling things that are on the shelf, getting a deep deal on a larger brand, but yet it's going to take a half an hour, 40 minutes to really tell the story of your brand again. They don't have time for that. So you need to be able to devote that time and build the brand, and that will start generating income that you can then start to maybe get a little bit of focus from our reps and be like, hey, that's actually working. I'm going to go out and sell that. You get a wider network of accounts, you get more money in the bank, and then you're able to devote a person, get even bigger. And you gradually and slowly build your sales team. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to do that. So you have to be able to know how to strategically move the needle on where to put the support dollars. And a lot of that is going to come from you as a brand owner right off the bat and grow over time.
And to
Okay.
add to
Go
that
ahead, Jesse.
real quick, yeah, some brands, there's different strategies behind that. Like, hiring a full-time rep, very expensive, right? One is going to be very expensive. But there's, different shared sales teams or infrastructures, companies that do it, which you really have to vet, of course, and speak with, get references to see how they've built other brands, not just go in blind, of course. But then also, if you know of other brand owners that work with reps, you can potentially share that cost if they're working with non-competing brands that maybe that's what they do for a living, just off commission or retainer or whatever the case may be, but they're an independent rep. Um, it's worth networking with fellow brand owners because a lot of times you can share cost when it comes to that, and maybe they're not solely dedicated to your brand, but they can get an incremental amount of sales going. So that's another thing to think about.
100% agree with that. I have brands that I manage that do that, that have, it's sort of like a broker model, but it's a much more focused broker model where brands will come together and be like, hey, let's team up, share resources, and get a body in the market. And so maybe that broker then that is just focused on those 3 or 4 brands, not 10, 20 brands. Ideal situation is you want somebody dedicated exclusively to your brand 100% in one market. It's a very expensive thing to do. So again, like graduating over the distributor types, maybe that's a solution that you can have in graduating to build a sales team over time.
So we have a couple of questions in the chat, but I do know you're going to talk about some of the key considerations that people should keep in mind over the next couple of
If
slides.
we need to
And
skip it, and we want
no,
to
I think those might actually answer some of these questions, but I do want to say there's one person in the chat that I think we're just going to have to connect you guys with directly because they've had their brand had a change in ownership and they're not getting any movement from one of the distributors. It was hired by the previous owner for a specific region, and so they're looking to see what they can do to change their distributor. And I think that's more of a direct conversation that they probably need to have with
Yeah.
probably with John or maybe Jesse. So we'll just connect you all together. And then the other question, this is a broader question about the contraction in the market of spirits and what should distributors and brand owners do to face it and keep sales going. I want to get that to the end because I think that's a larger question also as we think about, I had a final question at the end was like, the how the economy impacts and how different policies may impact, particularly going into next year,
I've
the
already
spirits
gotten
market.
that
So
question
you've
sometimes.
gotten that question. Okay, great. So let's
Yeah.
do this. Let's go to the next couple of slides in terms of your key considerations. I'm going to make sure that we connect, I think Rita, you with Jesse and John directly, and then we will get to the question about the contraction in the spirits market.
Yeah, so I mean, on this, to be honest, we'll go through these relatively quick. They're kind of like a recap of some of what John had gone over, but some things to think about, right? Aligning goals and setting clear expectations, which John has done really well actually just now, of like who's going to do what, right? One thing to think about is the SKUs, right? Selling 10 SKU, trying to get 10 SKUs into a district, it's just going to be like nearly impossible. You could focus on one. That would be probably ideal for a distributor, and then maybe two. You show that those are moving. So that's one thing because we do see a lot of like I'm coming with 3 tequilas, a blanco, reposado, añejo, and a extra añejo. And it's like that's going to be there's a lot of them out there, right? Offer attractive margins. Went over that. The value proposition, what gap does it fill, unique story, that aspect. We want to move to the last one. There's one that I do want to cover.
One thing I just want to emphasize, I think Jesse brings up a really good point about the SKUs. So much of what we're saying also ultimately rolls up to focus. And how do you get as focused as you possibly can? And the number of SKUs is a huge contributor to that. I love the 1 to 4 SKUs because that's what we also recommend. And even within those 1 to 4 SKUs, what is your number one ask and number one focus? You have to be so focused and keeping it as simple and tight as possible because that's going to help drive the resources to what you feel like is your biggest growth opportunity.
So maybe less is more, but I think you guys have a couple more key considerations on the next slide. So should we go to the next
I'll
slide?
go through just real quick and really the last one. I think I just want to kind of emphasize. So
Please move to the next slide. There you go.
So of course, understanding your economics as a business, as a brand owner, right? Knowing your COG, your cost of goods, and margin, gross profit margins, all of that. Talking about focused right there, right? Focused strategic approach. I think we've been discussing that, so that's pretty clear. But also the last piece, being an active, engaged partner, right? It's going to come down to you in the market. So one of the questions, I guess, is what we get a lot, or I personally get, it's a common question. It's like, where do you see this brand doing well in, or like what market, that type of thing. They're thinking of where to expand or thinking of where to even launch. And really it comes down to like, the markets we're talking about, states, right? Is, Florida, Texas, Illinois, California. They're massive with huge demographics and varied, very diverse demographics and that type of thing, larger than some countries, right? So there's a spot for your brand if you can support it. And so I think my messaging always goes back to, you can sell into Georgia and Florida or Texas, but what are you going to do to support it in the market? So I think that should be first, versus what market is the right market for my brand. It's like, how are you going to be in it, supporting, educating consumers, retailers, buyers, sampling, liquid to lips, again, all of that. And I think that's one thing that I always go back to, because that's far more important than just, do you think this will do well? I'm based in Miami, so I get that a lot. Do you think this will do well in Miami? That type of thing. So
Jesse, is that, show up at trade shows? Is that show up at the Bartender Expo and show up
yeah,
wherever to get your stuff on a menu? Like,
yeah, I mean, in terms of events, it totally depends on your goal. If
okay.
you're selling in one market, and maybe it's New York, and you're very on premise, on trade focused, BCB, Brooklyn might be the right show to be at, right? Or maybe you're considering expanding you just want to meet wholesalers or expand and get a feeling, WSWA. There's a lot of different ones, but if you're really hyper focused on a market and you don't really need yet to spend a lot of money on events, I mean, events are expensive, right? So you could spend that money on furthering your velocity, your sales, you're getting product moving in that home market or wherever you're trying to build. So yeah, there's a lot of factors.
I agree. Events are a nice to have, depending on where you are in your brand stage. Even with larger brands, events are a nice to have. You need somebody out in the market being the face of your brand, living, eating, breathing your brand, and in the right accounts, constantly there, showing that you're supporting those accounts. That is a much better use of funds than going to an event.
So we've got 12 minutes left now. So I lied to you guys. It's gone more than the 30 minutes I said it would go. So two things. One, I want to get to the sort of the impact of the economy and the contraction of the spirits market. That's one. And then secondly, someone actually puts in the Q&A that fractional sales hires. So this idea of fractional sort of
Fractional
experts on a particular
CEO,
issue, fractional
CFO,
CEOs, CFOs, attorney, whatever it is. Have you guys seen that? And have you seen that work, or any thoughts there?
As far as I go, I definitely seen fractional CEO, CFO, and I think it can be at a certain point in a business life cycle, not just the brand, right? The business life cycle. As far as sales, I haven't heard of fractional sales per se. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what we discussed of it's part-time, right? Essentially, or for a period of time. I think it's kind of the broker model or shared sales team. I don't know, John, if you've heard of that.
I honestly have never experienced that or seen that. It's just either they have kind of like a part-time ambassador, or they have a broker or a full-time employee. Those are kind of like the three options that I've seen.
Yeah, this fractional word is probably just falls within that. I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, John, that's more when you talk about the kind of shared services or shared support or whatever. Kind of thing. But there are some programs out there. I know like Pronghorn is one too. So yeah, this person says yes, it's a shared salesperson.
Yeah.
But Pronghorn, which is a Discus member that focuses on a specific segment of spirits suppliers, has that kind of support as well. Let's see. So I think we've gotten all the questions that are in the chat. So I just want to just put the contraction of the market. Can you all speak to that a little bit? Like the impact that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I just, just to keep it as top line as possible, we could spend a whole seminar on just that. But I think, the challenges within beverage alcohol right now, and it's not just a beverage alcohol thing, but I think it's more, we are seeing consumers being way more selective with what they purchase and how frequently they are purchasing. So while the number of accounts that we are servicing are, maintaining and sometimes even growing, the amount that's being purchased is less. And that's where we're seeing the strain coming from. There's also, price switches by consumers. So consumers are, especially in certain categories, are going down to a lower price tier that we're seeing. The upper price tier is staying as is. So anything like well over $100 is staying as is. But it's that kind of middle, that like $59.99 to $99.99 that we're seeing a lot of decline in, and that's been the most competitive. I think a lot of brands during the pandemic either came out with that price point because that was the sweet spot right then, because people were like, whatever, I'm spending more, I'm treating myself and all that. And now they're like, okay, let me go back to my kind of everyday price point. And that's where a lot of that, has regulated. There's also kind of the, what people are drinking is, and that kind of increase in the low no alc movement. We're seeing some switching to that. The base is still very small, but there is a little bit of erosion from, regular beverage alcohol because of that. And some of the, THC becoming more legalized across more markets. We're seeing a little bit of that switch, and a little bit of erosion from in terms of that, but it's still too early to really tell from a number standpoint, what that actually is. I think this all just gives us that much more challenge to make sure that we, as distributors and suppliers that are on this call, brand owners, to become that much more aligned on how we're going to market. Are we going to the right accounts? Are you, as brand owners, have a clear understanding of the types of accounts that you need to be in, activating, presenting, living, eating, breathing the brand in those to drive that, those reorders? So many times they're like, oh, my brand's okay, just get me wherever. That's not going to do it. You have to be that much more targeted and that much more strategic in where you're going to maintain your business. It's so, so important. And understanding the types of accounts, why, and do you have the materials, money, people to support those?
So I'm going to give Jesse the last word. So we've got 7 minutes left. So Jesse, I saw the Park Street Pavilion at the October BarCon Berlin event. And so can you give a high level review of how brands got involved, or should folks contact you, or how does that work?
Yeah, in terms of Berlin, Brooklyn,
Or either, yeah.
even there, I think have been announced London as well. So we'll have involvement we have involvement in all of those. And so we do Park Street University, which we do like Discus Academy, almost similar in a way, where it's just education for brand owners, right, suppliers and industry stakeholders. And we manage all of and procure the Park Street University education stage. So not for bartenders, this is more on the business side. So that's a big involvement aspect that we have, but also emerging brands pavilion. And so I might not be the direct person, best person to ask, but you guys can email me for sure, and I can get you in the right hands. But it's kind of
Jesse, what we could also do is, since we're going to send the recording out to everybody afterwards, if you're able to send to Discus either names or email addresses or links
Okay.
of your colleagues or whatever that we could include in the email that goes out to everybody, then people can
Oh,
access
that
it
would be
that
helpful.
way.
Yeah.
And then John, same thing for you. If there are specific, I don't know, links within the Breakthrough or Trident websites that you think might be useful information for folks on this call to get, let send them to email them to me afterwards, and we'll make sure we send them out to everybody. We do have 5 minutes left, and so I just want to say thank you to both of you. And we said this as we were in the green room. We're like, this can go on forever, which is great. We'll have to do this again next year, and
Part
maybe we'll do
two.
a series of conversations. But before we close, before everyone leaves, I just want to remind you of some of the upcoming events. If you thought this one was useful, first of all, this webinar and all the past Discuss webinars are available at distilledspirits.org/events. We know that October, November, December are super important key months for sales and whatnot. So we're doubling down on some relevant topics. So on next week, on the 21st, November 21, we're having another call, another webinar on tips on sales, distribution, and growth. December 2nd, we're having a webinar on packaging innovations to drive brand growth. That's featuring one of our craft distillers, Black Button Distilling, and a sort of advisory kind of thing that they have called Strategic Sourcing Hub. So definitely take a look at those. If you are a Discus member and you don't have access to the Discus member portal, email membership@distilledspirits.org, because there are some discounts and resources and links to competitions, to branding support and all that that via other partner members like Park Street. And we can make sure you guys get that. So take advantage of that. And then lastly, today is the last day for early bird pricing for the Discus Conference, March 26 to 28, 2025, here in Washington, D.C. You can go to, again, distilledspirits.org/events or email membership@distilledspirits.org to get the link. That conference is going to include panel discussions, breakouts, networking, receptions, a trade show, and optional visits to congressional offices. Obviously, because we're in Washington, D.C., and because there's a new administration, there's new members of Congress, and there's a lot of issues that are coming that are current and that will be coming on the pike for our industry. And so it's a good time to help policymakers understand our industry, our priority issues, and how the economy affects our industry. So just putting that out there as well. But I do want to thank Jesse and John for all the great insights and tips. Appreciate it. Hopefully you guys will, come back next year. We'll try and do another couple of webinars maybe on some of these topics. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully this was helpful.
Thank you all. Yeah,
It's
definitely. Thanks.
it's a great start. And so to everyone, this concludes our webinar. Again, thank you for joining, and you may disconnect, and we'll send you a recording afterwards.